So today we're going to be talking to Clayton Tucker of TuckerCM Digital. Clay, or Clayton, is the owner of TuckerCM Digital, a website design niche marketing agency based in Wisconsin. He's a graphic designer at heart and is just shy of hosting 100 websites. So the firm has three main services: search engine optimization, email marketing, and obviously website development. He is also a college dropout. He temporarily attended the University of Wisconsin Stout before switching over to FETC, if I'm correct. So, hello, Clayton, and welcome to the show.
Hello.
So, I want to start the conversation off nice and heavy. So, often we hear business owners or people who are self-employed are driven by typically two things: a pain that's pushing them away, and a hope that's driving them forward. So, what's pushing you forward to be a business owner?
Yeah, so for me, I think it was I worked a lot of previous jobs and I made a lot of people a lot of money, right? And the compensation that's there as far as being an employee goes just doesn't really match the amount of work that you end up doing versus what the people who actually own the business gain. Beyond that, I don't love working for other people. Kind of sucks as far as, they want things done a certain way. You don't agree with them, but they're the business owners, so you kind of have to do what they want at the end, and that's like every job that you work. So I never really wanted to continue being in that sort of cycle of being an employee and making somebody a ton of money when you only get a very small percentage of that back.
Right. So the business owner kind of takes a little bit on top, and you feel like you're kind of shorted there, right?
Right. Well, so like for example, I was the general manager of a pizza place for a long time.
Hmm.
Um, I as the general manager, it was obviously during COVID, so it was a challenge. And I was a salary based employee, so I made the same amount every 2 weeks or whatever. I managed a team of 26 people, and the store over the lifetime of me being the general manager 4x'd its profit. So, but my salary barely moved.
Right.
So that is an example of basically, well, now they're making a whole bunch of money, but now they're like, now the business owner's like, well, now I'm making a whole bunch of money and I don't want to give it back to the people who helped me get here. And I don't think every
Right.
business owner is that way, but I think in
Mhm.
a lot of industries, and definitely the bigger the business gets, it turns more into that. So,
Yeah. It seems more like you're getting more paid based on the time that you work and not the value you actually provide to the business. So, like,
exactly.
that's one thing that you see a lot in sales, right? You're getting like X amount for, like, you're getting a 20K salary, but then you're getting what, like 15-20% commission on
Right.
top. And that's going to change based on the industry, right? Because if you're doing marketing and sales, it's going to vary.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, when it comes down to it, you should be paid like for the value you provide. And like, if I make you $1 million, like that's awesome, but like I should be compensated for that, right? And like fairly. Uh, if the one thing I like really believe as far as the way I run my business and things like that goes is if I make enough people successful, I will by default be successful. So I want
Right.
all the people that work underneath me to be successful and happy with what they're doing, what they make, and make sure they're taken care of in that way. Because if they're taken care of, by default, at the end of the day, it might take a little bit longer. It's not instant gratification, but at the end of the day, I'll be just fine and successful because I made all of the people around me successful in what they're doing.
Right. So you're kind of doing like, I say givers gain effect, right? Like,
Right.
I know it's coined a lot in BNI and said, but like you're giving people value and you're getting a portion of that value in return as kind of an exchange. And of course, it's not always guaranteed. That's not how it's going to be every
No,
single time.
nothing in
But as a
business is
general rule,
guaranteed. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Right. If you're helping someone out, they're probably going to help you out. Like,
Right.
pass a referral, they might pass your referral back, etc.
Absolutely. And mostly I'm talking about the people that work for me. Like I want to
Right.
make sure uh that they're happy and successful, because if they're happy and successful, they can do a great job, meaning that the company is going to benefit from that. And I think if
Right.
you keep that same kind of thought, no matter how big you get, you're going to be successful at the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's just breeding a good culture, right? Like,
Right.
I mean, one of those things of like, if you treat them right, they'll treat you right. And then if they figure treating you right is helping out the business, then of course that's good culture.
Well,
Like
right. And
one thing that I was always thinking about was one ways that you can always get like help someone out is the little things, even in just the business. Like even if you're not necessarily increasing their wage, right? Like maybe you can't justify more, but you can like it's that cliche pizza party. Like that's dumb and all. But say, hey, I feel like you're being heard. How does this sound? Let's revisit that in a month when it's possibly a lot more
right.
a more of a possibility and like in the meantime, what's your favorite coffee? We'll throw it into
Right.
the
Or like,
rotation or something like that, right?
another good example of that could be like, let's say you watch a ton of YouTube. Well, something
Mhm.
I could do that's not like a direct raise to your income is I could pay for your YouTube premium so you don't have to sit and watch ads. It's not that expensive for me. It's a huge like improvement to your quality of life as far as like content consumption, and it's something that you don't have to pay for. So that's just an example, but you can do with a lot of things.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of things like that, just little things that you can do with, I would say, like employees or contractors that you can just really help them out. Like, I love how business you can help everyone out. Like, even if it's just
Yeah.
passing one person to another person, it's so nice to just get that, like, that dopamine spike of, like, I did a good thing. You know what I
Well,
mean?
right. Yeah, and something that I had to something I contended with when the first year in my business is like I can do a lot of stuff, but like at the end of the day, what makes me like more successful versus what I can hand off to somebody else is also something you have
Right.
to like contend with. Because it's like, could I sit and design everyone's logo and design social media posts and all sorts of stuff? Could I do that? Yes. Um, is it likely better for me to just pass that somebody else's way and either pay them to do it or they just take on the client in that capacity? Probably.
Mhm.
And then
Yeah,
stay good at what we're good at.
exactly. It's keeping niche down at what you're good at.
Right. Right. And being
On
okay
that,
with like losing the business to somebody else
right.
if they're providing that service and you're like, hey, like they do a great job, use them for this and we'll take care of this for you. And just being okay with like that profit's not going to come into your hands is something you have to contend with definitely before you're like more okay with giving out as many referrals as you possibly can.
Right. Yeah, 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 yeah. On that kind of like passing business off, how would you say you mitigate stress tolerance? Because I know that's a really big thing for business owners of like, there's a lot of cash coming in, there's a lot of cash going out, you're not entirely sure what's going on. I mean, QuickBooks gives you kind of a great little like synopsis of it, but you can't really get the full picture just from QuickBooks. Like, how do you handle all of the little intricacies and stresses of running the business?
Well, I mean, yeah, if you would have told me 2 years ago that A, I would have this much money come into my account per month, and B, if you would like I would watch it leave in almost the same rate, I would have been like, that's insane. Right? Um, Business is expensive. And I think part of stress tolerance is I have a good support system. My girlfriend's great. Um, and things like that. So family's good. They're always really supportive, everything like that. I think also like if we're talking like strictly finances, is like you can't be married to the idea that you need to have everything that you want while you're trying to start a business. Like just because the business is making money doesn't mean you make money. And I think just like understanding the boundaries there and like kind of the ideals around it helps mitigate the stress a little bit as well. But as far as other stress, do fun things still. Like just because you are starting a business, and just because it's a ton of work and a lot of effort and time doesn't mean that you can't go for a hike or go play volleyball or whatever you want to do to also stay in a healthy frame of mind. And I had to learn that over the past um, probably good year that I've been doing this. Is I had to learn that it's okay. Like, maybe there's still a million things to do, maybe we're still really busy, maybe there's people waiting on things, but it's also okay to be like, hey, I need to go and do something for myself that's healthy, and um, acknowledging that that's okay is a good form of stress mitigation as well.
Yeah, switching up the pace there, because I know that's one thing that I know I personally struggle with, and I'm sure a lot of other people do, is having that off switch. Like, I'm never sure if someone texts me at 1 in the morning, there's probably a 95% chance I'm gonna respond, right?
Right.
It's it's that thing of when do I have that off time so that I can kind of go, okay, what happens happens. Just take a deep breath.
Mm-hmm.
And that's definitely something I've seen a lot of business owners struggle with. I know real estate especially is really bad with this.
24
When
hours a day, that's what they say when you start real estate. You're working
so
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of anything else. And I get that in that regard. Um, Obviously, every business is different for sure. But yeah, real estate's a tough one.
yeah, it seems to be really difficult to find that balance because in real estate, the I guess the big attractor is freedom, but also money. And that's not necessarily the best way to look at it because although you're making more and you have more freedom, that freedom is limited significantly more than you would with a normal job. And so I know that's one of the big misconceptions that we see a lot with just businesses in general is people seem to think, oh, it's this like I can just pay someone to do it. And it's like, yes, maybe after like 10 years,
Sure. Yeah.
but you have to grind it out for those 10 years first.
Right.
So it's really difficult to find that.
Yeah, I would say one thing I'm trying to do this year is I'm trying to separate my home and work. Um,
Mhm.
so at some point this year, I mean, I've been on the lookout, but finding an office space where I can get everyone that kind of works with me. I'm not necessarily like saying that everyone's got to be there every day, but maybe a couple days a week, everyone's in the office so we can see each other, talk face to face, whatever, have a meeting about how things are going. But it'd be a place where it's like, and I'm not even saying I'd be there every day, but it's a place where like, maybe 3, 4 days a week I can go to work instead of being at home. And then on those days when I come home, um, you know, then I'm done with work,
Relax.
you know?
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. It would be nice to have kind of this segmented area of like this is where work is, this is where not work is. And it's definitely one of those things of like I've almost conditioned myself with I work with a cup of coffee in hand or I work with a drink.
Mm-hmm.
So when I have a drink, I know that's work time. But when I don't have a drink, it's not work time. And that's definitely causing a lot of I would say that's causing me a lot of issues because like I want to sit down and read a book, but as soon as I grab that cup, I'm like, oh, it's work time. So I've conditioned myself in something that shouldn't be conditioned.
Right.
Whereas going to work, it would be that really easy on off.
Well, and there's something to be said too, and I'm sure you know this as a person who likes going to the gym and different things like that, but having like a routine where you get ready and go
Yeah.
somewhere is pretty nice for productivity. So my thought is if I can be more productive because I have a routine and go somewhere that's meant just for work, then the investment of what that'll cost is worth it. So
Yeah.
that's part of
100%.
it too. So it's definitely a goal of mine this year. I've been working from home for 2 straight years, and I don't specifically love it. As you said, it's hard to have an off switch. As far
It
as like
is.
my office is always just down my hallway, so it's and also I it would be nice to like instead of like obviously I'll still have a home office, but my normal computer is here too. So it's like I sit in the same chair, whether I'm watching YouTube at night or working.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a when do I stop working
That's a good point.
deal.
I know I kind of segment that with my phone and my laptop. Like my laptop is work and my phone is kind of leisure. But I suppose if you're doing both of those on the same machine, that would cause another big issue.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Interesting.
that'll be another thing I do down the road is separate those two things. Like this is my whatever gaming content machine, and then this is my actual work computer. That, but got to get there first. Can't have six computers right out the gate.
Right. Right. Yeah, you don't have the capital for that.
Mm-hmm.
So, while we're still on the topic of business, I know that you are a huge advocate of BNI and networking groups. In what ways has networking helped grow your business, and what would you recommend to people to watch out for in networking?
So I think for us specifically, networking is a big reason why we're to the point we are now. Um, Now, I think something that happens that people kind of shy away from in networking is like you go to the same groups, you see the same people and all this stuff, and people talk about the good things that people do, and they attempt to pass referrals around. And I think though one main thing that's really important is like making sure that you're like being honest inside of those groups and like making sure that the what you say you can do and everything like that. I think that sometimes in networking groups, and I see this even with mine, we're in a bigger BNI group, so there's a lot of people in there, and I know that not every time we go around the room and everyone says the things that they can do and whatever, I know that some of those things aren't true. Um, I try to stay away from that. I try to be honest in like what I can provide, what I can do. Like I'm not going to stand up and tell everyone I can 4x your profits by the end of the year. I'm just not going to do that. I'm not going to make wild guarantees to try to get people to pass me referrals or things like that. So I think one main thing is to like understand your capabilities, also understand that it's a networking group and people are there to like kind of pat each other on the back a little bit and like just accept that and move on with it. But it's really valuable if done correctly. Um,
Yeah, I 100% agree. There's definitely a lot of issues with like I wouldn't say a lot of issues, but there seems to be a lot of fudging of numbers, if you will. Like it's one thing to say like this is the best I've done. This is I can't guarantee this for you, but I can certainly try my best versus saying like I can guarantee this for you.
yeah.
Right? There's no guarantees especially in marketing because the reality is it's up and down. Like it's like the stock market. You can't guarantee a steady flow,
Well,
right?
anytime you're
You
dealing
have to
with
kind of go
trend
up and
lines,
down.
right? Yeah. Anytime you're dealing with trend
Yeah.
lines in anything, in marketing, it's very trend based. So, um, when with all of our clients and the things that we do for them, I like to see things trending in the right direction. Now trends
Right.
go up and down, so it's not going to be at a straight 45 going up, but you have to be able to look at the different time ranges and be like, hey, look, what are our capabilities actually? What kind of value do we actually provide? And that's another good place with networking groups too. Something that a lot of people do is like cut discounts or reduced rates for network like people inside of networking groups, and I only
Mhm.
do that with one thing, which is hosting, because I know that my
Mm,
business can support a little bit less hosting profit per client if they come from the BNI group, and that's fine. I'm
true.
not saying referrals, but like actual members of the group, because I'd love for everyone in the group to be on our using our services as far as that goes, because I know it's a higher quality service than they're going to find elsewhere, probably for cheaper as well. So,
Yeah, I 100% agree. And especially with someone directly in your network like BNI or directly in that area, you can give a lower price to get to ensure that everyone's on because then they can better advocate for you.
right,
Like if it's really difficult for let's say a financial advisor, it's really hard for you to advocate for them if you've never been under them or like had them
right,
help you with anything because you don't entirely it's so personal between like financial advising is definitely a one-on-one thing, or it's almost the same thing as like a psychiatrist. Let's say you have a psychiatrist. You can't really advocate them because the reality is in networking groups, they're going to give off a different vibe, if you will, right, between
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
actual psychiatry.
I would definitely say like wealth advice is a great example. But yeah, like there's a lot of they let most just about anybody in a networking group. There's not like a crazy vetting process. So making sure that like and have talked to like in BNI it's called a one-to-one, right? Making sure that you do
Right.
that with somebody before you pass them referrals so you can get an idea of who they are. If you actually sit down and talk with them an hour, you can tell kind of who's who and what's what from that.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure you do that before you just like willy-nilly throw referrals places, because when you give a referral to someone you know or have met or built a connection with, obviously it's a like you're giving them your word that this person's going to do right by them, and if that doesn't happen, well, I mean, it's not going to be they're not going to like turn around and be like, hey, what the hell, but they might be like, oh man, Clayton said that this guy was pretty good and it didn't go that way. So
Yeah. That's something that I've always been really careful with is if it's someone that I don't necessarily trust, like I'll be upfront with them. I'll just be like, "Hey man, I met so and so at a networking group. It seems like it would be a good idea. I don't know them super well, but I'd be happy to put you two in contact." And right, because that sets the standard of like, "Hey, I'm not entirely sure, but I'm happy to let you try it out if you'd like to, or this
right,
might be a good connection for you." Because then you're still passing referrals in a sense. It's just more of a cold referral, not necessarily a warm referral.
right, like don't have your parents hire the contractor that's in the group before like actually talking to the contractor in the group, because your parents are going to come back to you and be like, hey, what the hell, you recommended this guy and he sucks or
Yes, man.
whatever.
Yeah,
Lots of different
exactly.
ways of looking at it, but yeah, definitely really powerful if done correctly. I would say my business started because of a networking type group, like
Mhm,
and kind of grew from there. But then now that we're to the point that we're at, it's less important. But the
mhm.
connections I've gotten from it are what helped me grow it to this point. So I still go, I still sign up every year, and I think I definitely like most of a good like 70% of the people in the room are already my clients. So it's like I talk to them every week. It's not like there's a ton of value in me being there, but I still think it's valuable. I still think some of the referrals that get sent our way turn into sales. And like, if that's the case, um, I think a main thing with it is, BNI costs a decent amount of money per year to be in. Um, so making sure you're getting a return on that investment. If you're not getting a return on that investment from the group, it's probably not right for you. So keeping that in mind.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I think there's certain instances in which you just kind of get vetted into the group. Like I know there's some there's an older guy in my group that doesn't really take a ton of referrals just because he's so booked up. But he also has BNI as a backup of like, hey, if I run out of people in my business, I have that failsafe of like, there's people ready to refer to me right away.
Right.
And so he almost always has that consistent. And it's not necessarily that he's getting an ROI on it. He might be losing like $200 a year, but the reality is $200 a year for a failsafe of guaranteed clients. Like I'll take that any day of the week.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, again, no guarantees in business, but you have a really good chance because of the personal connection you can build in a networking group to be past business.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Exactly. On that, what have you gotten any like personal anything personal out of BNI? Like I know a lot of the one-to-ones people will help you out personally. So for example, when I was trying to find housing this year, right, just asking around people, hey, do you know anyone looking for or looking to rent or right, just asking around in networking groups really helped me out with that because I was able to find better deals. Right, I was better to essentially vet the landlords, if you will. Have you found anything like that with any of your networking groups?
I mean, I definitely think you can ask those types of questions and sometimes I haven't really done much of that. One thing I will
Mhm.
say is I've gotten something about being a business owner that's like not talked about a whole lot is like you don't actually have the opportunity to empathize with a lot of people that are like were in your life before. So BNI or a networking group can be a place where you can meet other business owners that have shared experiences with yourself, and build a little bit more of a connection sometimes than just a business connection. So I have a couple friends that I met in that group that joined the group. I met them, had a one. I was like, wow, these people are cool. We went golfing, whatever. Now we talk all the time, and we can talk a lot more, about what each other's experiences have been like, and like have a bit more of an understanding versus someone you meet elsewhere that has no idea and their priorities are completely different and things like that. So I will say that like the personal relationship aspect you can get from a networking group, it can work out that way, and sometimes it's nice because like I said, it's hard to find people to empathize with sometimes as a business owner for sure.
It is definitely interesting with like the business owner and just trying to find someone. I know on a college campus that's really difficult to find someone, especially because there's next to no one in my shoes. And there's the only guy that I found that's in a relatively similar boat. His name is Alex. I'll give him a plug here. It's Sorcerer AI. Just look that up. So he essentially does like he's building an AI Google plugin, but the problem is he's not to the stage in business where he's actually taking orders yet. He's just trying to get pre-orders and trying to find someone to essentially beta test it. And so it's even that is a little bit difficult because he doesn't fully understand like the intricacies of business or networking yet.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've thrown him kind of off the deep end, but it's really hard to find someone to kind of connect with on that level
Yeah.
of being a business owner or struggling with finances outside of a networking group.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, and that's why it's important too. I mean, at the end of the day, you need people to talk to. Community is what wins and everything like that. So having that sense of community with anybody or anything or any group is important for you. You can't do everything alone. You do have to talk to people, and that that's a big part of what I get out of the networking group a lot of times too. It's like, yeah, I get a lot of business from it, but I also get to talk with people who have shared experiences with myself, and that's important.
It's extremely valuable, I agree. And that's definitely a big thing for mental health of having friendships. Like that's one of the top things I would say on a priority list of like this needs to be near the top. So on that, different switch topic here. Given that you're a college dropout, do you believe college is a productive use of time, or do you think that people should pursue other things?
So it's totally circumstantial. Um,
Mhm.
what it actually comes down to is what you want to do. If you want to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or anything like that, college you're gonna need it. You're gonna need it to get into those careers, to further your career inside of those spaces. Obviously, like science and engineering and everything gets rolled into there. Like you do need the formal education because those are very formal fields and they require a lot of keeping up with certain things and reading, and all of the skills you learn in college are very applicable. Outside of that, my like actual belief is no, you really shouldn't be spending your time in college. There are certain, if you want to get super specialized, yeah, it can be valuable, but really what we're talking about is there's two types of people. There's a specialist and there's a generalist, right? um, if you're a specialist and if you're in high school or coming to the end of high school and you know exactly what you want to do with the rest of your life, you're very planned, you're very measured, and you know that college is going to get you to the next step, absolutely. Go spend your time and money in college. You'll get there. That's the type of person you are. Um, if you're more of a generalist, you don't know really what you want to do, and you're not looking to be specialized, like super specialized in anything, I would say that working different jobs getting to know different people, understanding different walks of life and perspective, as well as figuring out what you like and the work ethic that's going to be required to meet the goals that you want to meet in your life is more important, and you're really not going to find that in a college setting.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I definitely think college misses a lot of things, like, especially being thus far. There's a lot of options to kind of explore outside, but it's not encouraged as much as it could be. I know the business department, so I believe it's the School of Century, is what they call it here at UWSP, and they seem to advocate for doing things outside that would be in addition to college that I think's almost more beneficial than college itself. Like, to me, I've learned a lot more just from talking to people and networking than I actually have in college thus far, and that seems really off.
Yeah.
Like, I'm aware that the paper can get you raises and whatever, but especially with the college costs, what was it, 5xing in the last like 30, 40 years? 5xing compared to the median staying just slightly the same or a little bit above. I'm not entirely confident that it's worth it for everyone. And I think you do need that specialty. Like, you can't just go here and I guess screw around, right?
Yeah, college isn't for figuring out what you want to do. If
Yeah.
that's what you are going to college to do, get out. You're wasting your money, you're wasting your time. And there's nothing wrong. Like when I went to college, there was when I was there, I was freshman year, I was right out of high school, whatever. I went right there. I didn't take a year off, anything like that. I thought I knew what I wanted to do, which turns out what I do now is still the same thing, but um I met a lot of people who were, so I was like 18, 19 years old, whatever. And I met a lot of individuals who were like in their late 20s, just starting school. And I was like, interesting, because everybody that I knew that went to college went right out of high school and went to college, whatever. So it kind of changed the stigma for me as far as like you can get like if you decide what you want to do later in life and it requires school, you can go back to school. There's nothing saying that you can't. There's nothing saying that you have to be on some sort of specific timeline to get where you want to be. Um, so I think that's an important kind of thing to kick out of your brain that, oh, I need to go to college right out of
Yeah.
high school, otherwise I'm going to get left behind or anything like that. I think it's just fine to take the time to learn what you want to do, learn what you like, and then make your decisions from there.
I 100% agree. And the other thing with that is you can also build up capital before you go into college, so you're not put in as much debt. Because college debt is also the only form of debt that isn't forgivable after you file for bankruptcy, which just to me is crazy. Like, I know there's a ton of guys that I know that are taking on college debt and just flunking out of classes. And it's like, so you're taking on debt that you can't forgive for nothing? Like, at least figure out what you want to do so that you're motivated to not fail your classes. Like, even if it's a gen ed and you have to struggle through it, it's a good thing to learn that skill in addition to your primary skills.
Yeah.
Like, that's one thing that I wish that they had in college that I think is a great thing for people to do right out of high school is sales. Like, even if you're not going to be a business owner, even if you're not going to go into sales, being able to sell yourself in a job interview or anywhere else is a skill that is just going to yield so much return.
Yeah, sales and
And
public
so,
speaking, man. Sales and public speaking are extremely underrated things that you need to learn how to do. You need to learn how to talk to people. You need to learn how to talk about yourself and not sound like you've never done it before. Um,
yeah.
in that world, confidence is key, and unfortunately, the only way to build confidence is to do it more. Um,
Mhm.
so, going back to the networking group, it's a great learning opportunity for new business owners to start talking about themselves, start having conversations around business and around sales. And I know, as you've learned, it's like it's not as easy as it sounds, right? Um, I am fairly lucky in the way that I was always good at public speaking I've never really had a problem with talking to people or selling things. Um,
Yeah.
so that being said, it fits the things that I'm good at to be a small business owner, and um, that's the part of the business that I excel really well at. Like once I get a meeting, my chances of getting the sale go up dramatically. Um,
Yeah.
so and I have gotten sales without ever having a meeting too, just based on reputation, based on what people said. They call me and they're like, "Hey, yeah, send the contract, we'll do it. We'll get started." Though that's awesome because that means reputation precedes you, but you still have to have that sales backbone for sure.
Right. Yeah, I 100% agree. That I bring that up partly because that's definitely one thing that I struggle with. Like I'm naturally very introverted. And so my biggest thing is like empathizing with people and doing those really deep one-on-one conversations. But the problem is you need to be able to sell before you get there. Right? You need to be able to say, "Hey, I earned this." Or right, in a sense of like I earned this conversation. But that's definitely a really difficult thing. One thing that I wish I would have started earlier is actually going to the networking groups earlier. Like even like I've only started within the last like year and a half, right? But the one thing that I wish is I started going earlier because the earlier you go, the more you learn. And I would say even if you're in high school, I would say if your parents go to a networking group, I would say show up, say, "Hey, I'm just here to learn what it's like."
Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
even if you don't become a business owner and go to networking groups or you're not in marketing, you don't go to networking groups, you learn to be comfortable talking to other people that you don't know. Because think about
Right.
it, you're talking to a room of 20 people you don't know. And that's extremely uncomfortable the first time. But then you learn how to deal with that and sit in that uncomfortable sense, if you
Yeah,
will.
that's a great point about business too. Is like we talked about stress mitigation and things like that. It's like you have to be okay with being uncomfortable. Like
Mhm.
financially, situationally, things are going to be uncomfortable. You're going to have uncomfortable conversations with people that work for you, with clients, all sorts of things, and you just have to be okay with it. You can't let it ruin your entire day, your entire week. Um, you're gonna have bad interactions. You're gonna have really good interactions. It's just being able, like you said, sit in it and learn from it is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's definitely really interesting of like the learning thing between everything because that's how I look at almost everything. Right? The biggest thing that's going to help you build wealth in the future isn't trying to build wealth. It's learning from the things that you didn't build wealth from, or you didn't get money from, or you didn't like you learn from everything. And really, that knowledge base is what makes you valuable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you look at most of our intellectual jobs for graphic design, for example, you're valued because you know how to build or, I guess, develop a good logo.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not entirely sure if that's the right word, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you're valued for what you can provide on an intellectual level. It's the same thing with a computer programmer. You're valued because you know how to build something in that sense and develop a program. So I would say always getting more of an education in these specific things that you know you want to go to. That's the same thing with college, right? If you don't know what you want to go for, it isn't valuable. Whereas if you get like sales or marketing, right, that's a skill that transfers over to everything. And so learning that first and then deciding what you want to go into is a great way to go.
Yeah. Also, I mean, as you said, selling yourself as far as getting any job ever, you have to go through an interview, right? And
Mm-hmm.
learning how to sell yourself, um, even in that setting, is really, really, really important. You're never going to get something you don't ask for. Therefore, in sales, um, you got to be willing to ask. You got to be willing to talk, everything like that. And that goes for interviews too. So it's valuable even if you're not a business owner in your
Agreed.
future life as well.
100% agreed. Kind of circling it back to the college thing. What are your thoughts on now Gen Z struggling with job interviews, especially out of college? In that more, what was it recently? More college graduates are unemployed comparatively to non-college graduates of the same age.
Yeah, it's just a lack of experience when it comes down to it.
Mm.
You haven't, when you come out of college, you've gone through one system. You haven't had to have the conversations that you need to have with adults. And one thing that happens when you go and do different jobs is you learn people's experiences, and whether I've had jobs where I'm working with a 50-plus-year-old lady who has 4 kids, and you can still learn something from them, a perspective, and perspective is everything. I think that's the thing that
Mm.
most people coming out of college lack, is just perspective, and it shows when you talk in an
Yeah.
interview or something like that, and people can tell. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes the people who are the same age as
Mm.
them that didn't go to college, they just have more perspective and experience. They've talked to more people. They haven't been inside of a bubble that is the
Right.
college kind of ecosystem. So,
It yeah, I 100%. It's hard to put yourself in their shoes if you've never tried on other shoes.
right.
Like you can't it's hard to understand something that you've never even been close to. Like you can almost create an analogy, but that's not the same.
Right.
Like I think one thing that would definitely help me with I actually would think would help a lot of people with getting a job would be just something like put yourself in the employer's shoes. Kind of what would they be looking for? Like even if it's a middle manager, what would they be looking for?
Right.
Because 9 times out of 10, I guarantee you it's not skills.
Yeah.
College can give you the skills, but can they teach you how to be like, hey, you're my boss. What do you need from me? I'm willing to learn. Like that's just something that if you bring that up in an interview, 9 times out of 10, you're gonna get bumped up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Being, I think another thing that comes with coming out of college is a lot of people that age think they know a lot, right?
Yeah.
And like the reality of the situation is you don't. Like you might, like you said, you might have been taught some skills, you might have learned some things, but the real world versus the college kind of educational system world are two very, very, very different things. And I know that because I mean, I'm older now. I've been part of both before. I have perspective from both sides. So I think just understanding that, like, hey, um, you don't know everything yet, and like being willing to learn especially is really important. But yeah, I think also setting aside some ego,
Yeah.
um when it comes down to, if you a lot of having a college degree comes with this like an inherent sense of entitlement. I'm not saying that everyone who goes through the college system is entitled, but when they come out of school, they look on the internet and they go, "Oh, the median salary for my job or my field is this. That's what I'm going to ask for." Well, you don't have any experience. So the median salary typically applies to someone who has been the median worker in that field for the median amount of time. So you are coming into it with no experience. You haven't worked in the field before. You cannot expect the median salary for the job that you want to get coming out the gate. That's just not the way it works. So,
Yeah, I 100% agree. I know there's one person that I've talked to before. He has I believe it's an associate's degree in networking. And he has this like entitlement towards getting a job in networking, even though like financially it doesn't make sense. Right? Like even if you have the skills and you earned that degree, if you could go somewhere and make enough to support yourself versus continuing in the industry and not making enough to support yourself, put your ego aside. Go work somewhere that you can support yourself. And I know Ryan Holiday, actually I have it right here. The Ego is the Enemy book. So that I absolutely love that book because it brings up the fact of like your ego is so detrimental in 1,000 different ways. Like you don't even realize it.
absolutely.
Like people, even if they don't say it to your face, they will recognize that you have an ego and be like, he's not worth it. Whereas especially if you're upfront and you're like, hey man, listen, I can't guarantee you anything. I'm going to be completely honest. This is what I've done for other people, but I can't guarantee it for you.
Right.
And I can do my best with this. Or I'm constantly eager to learn. Like, I want to know what you have to say, what you know that I don't.
Yeah.
Because the reality is you're ignorant to something everyone else has. Everyone, I don't care who it is, will know something more than you.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's like what I said. Even if you, as the person who's coming out of college, when you join the workforce and you are talking to people, even if they're, say you get hired as a manager or something, well, you're going to be managing people that are probably in their 30s and 40s because they don't have a college degree. So they're underneath you by default. But that does not mean you
Right.
know more than them. That does not mean you're better than them. And it also doesn't mean that you can't learn a great deal of things from them. So, like, making
Right.
sure that you understand that just because you may make more or you have a higher position does not does not equate to I'm better and don't need to learn something from all the people that are underneath slash I work with moving forward. And I think that's a valuable lesson that just about every person coming out of college should understand.
I agree. It's that one thing. So for a while, I taught national youth leadership training, and the one thing that they really hammered in on was something called servant leadership, and that's how they coined it. It's as a leader, your job isn't to be in charge of people, right? You are in charge of them, but your job is to advocate for them. Your job is to work with them and advocate. So if, for example, I'm working with a team of 5 and we have to build a website, we'll just use this for an example, but the client wants something that we can't do. Your job as a manager isn't to tell your team, hey, this needs to be done. Your job as a manager is to be like, hey, this is what our team is capable of. Maybe we should sit down and talk about it and why this is the case. It's kind of serving the team, setting your ego aside, because the reality is it's not your team. You're working for the team.
Absolutely.
And I think this is what you hinted at earlier is like you want everyone under you to do better than you, or like you want to help them in some way. Kind of that giver's gain thing again of like I want to help everyone and not necessarily myself.
Yeah, yeah, and by doing that, like A, you'll probably be more fulfilled. B, you'll probably be more
Mhm.
successful. And C, you're not gonna come off like you're only out here for yourself.
Mhm.
Nobody likes that. And I mean, I understand that in the real world you kind of have to be out for yourself. There are certain situations where you do need to be selfish, especially in business. But yeah, understanding that that's not the goal is important. And yeah, I'll always kind of stick by that. I don't think I'll ever like really change in that regard as far as how I think about that because I think you can make $10,000 a year, you can make $2 million a year, and I don't think that dictates the type of person you should be.
I agree. I 100% agree. And I would rather. I know one thing that I've always said is like I would rather be someone who's poor and stuck to my morals and like helped someone out than rich and like screwed everyone over. Like I don't.
Yeah, I couldn't
I
really go to
hate that.
sleep at night. Uh, well, if I knew that all of my success was off the back of somebody else that I screwed over, that's
I 100% agree.
not really going to work for me, especially in the future when you look back at it and be like, how did I run myself in these situations? It's important to have some sort of moral standard.
Yeah, that would definitely hurt. Well, I'll tell you what. Let's wrap it up there. I appreciate it.
Yeah, awesome, awesome,
Thank
awesome.
you.
It was a good time. So.